Hey guys, been a while since I've done a head-to-head, and I love doing a good head-to-head comparison. And they don't get much better than this. Today, comparing head-to-head, the SIG Sauer P320 full size in 9mm against the new SIG Sauer P320 X5, also in 9mm, and also very, very full size. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about is the size difference and how they're different, where they're different, and maybe where they're not different. I'm going to do a bunch of shooting with them and give you my thoughts on how each of them shoots compared to the other. Especially going to talk about triggers. Now, one quick caveat on triggers. The P320 full-sized here is wearing the Apex drop-in trigger. It doesn't change the trigger pull, but it obviously does change the feel a little bit of the trigger. But that'll be more of a direct comparison against the flat trigger that does come in the X5 version of the P320. So it's not exactly bone stock for the P320, but everything else is. Obviously, one of the big differences to talk about is the 21 round magazines for the X5, but you can also get a 21 round magazine for the P320. I talked about how they're shaped different. I'll touch on that a bit more later and how they're not compatible, and I'll definitely touch on that a bit more. But let me load these things up and get shooting them. So I can't think of a better way to start out than with SIG Sauer Elite Performance ammo. Of course, with these 21 round magazines, you can go through a box of ammo super fast. I'm not going to load them full. I'm going to load them maybe 15 rounds. The other P320 comes with 17 round magazines as the standard capacity magazine. It's a beautiful day for a change, finally, and this is the beginning of Memorial Day weekend, so wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whenever you're watching this, because it doesn't have to be on a designated weekend, just take a moment and thank our veterans that have sacrificed everything so that we can enjoy things like this. All right, let me just get warmed up a little bit. I'm going to start out with the P320 regular. I do have a Talon grip on it too, in addition to the Apex trigger, so maybe that will offer an advantage. I don't yet have a Talon grip for the X5, but the good folks at Talon did say they put a little something in the mail, so I'm thinking that's what it is. Okay, I've got two black dots on my target, so I'm going to pick one for one gun, one for the other. Let's start out at the body, which is the lower square. I'm 10 yards back. Let me just get acquainted with and refresh my memory. Man, I love the P320. Sweet, sweet. So that feels really nice. And one of the things when I was shooting the X5 for my Guns America review, and if you saw that, you may remember. If you didn't see that, get over there and watch it. Go read it. I'll put the links below for that, by the way. But one of the things I commented about that was, you know, the grip feels a little more square. So it's kind of nice to get this little more oval feel in my hands. Okay, now I'm going to go to the top dot with the X5. One of the things right off the bat that's different are the sights. Got this Dawson sight set, blacked out rear, very thin front blade with a bright green dot, fiber optic, course, it has a flat trigger right out of the box. Trigger pull and reset feel very, very similar. Yep. Groups look to be about the same size from back here. All right, let's take a look at these two sight pictures, just for comparison. First up, the P320 Classic. These are the SIG light night sights, traditional 3-dot combination. Now the P320 X5, and you can definitely see the difference. Got that blacked out rear with anti-glare serrations, and look at the glow of the green dot on that front with that fiber optic sight. Okay, I'm still with the X5, new magazine. I'm shooting mostly SIG Sauer Elite Performance, but I've got a bunch of different ammo I'm going to put through both of these guns today. I'm not going to really try and keep track, tell you what I'm shooting at any given moment. It's all just your basic 115 grain or 124 grain full metal jacket range ammo stuff. The X5 feels smaller than it is, and the trigger feels lighter than it is, if that makes any sense. I'll get numbers on both of these trigger pulls later, but they are very similar feeling. The texture is good on the grip of the X5, but it really could use a Talon. But then I think that about pretty much every polymer frame gun. Your mileage may vary. I really, really like the sights. These Dawson sights are incredible. Very precise. But there's a lot of airspace. So if that bugs you, that's something to consider. And I wouldn't say, you know, you can just change them out. You can, of course, but that's an expensive pair of sights. You've paid good money to have these Dawson sights on the gun, so I would think you'd want to like it the way it comes. Man, it is a heck of a shooter, though. It's starting to eat a hole there in that target. The P320, the P320 Classic, if you can call a gun that's only a model that's only about 2 years old a classic, does have a different feel. It's got a rounder feel in the butt of the gun. It's more of an oval compared to a rectangle, and I prefer it. I like the feel of the regular P320 a bit better than I do the X5. Now this one has SIG light night sights on it, so it's your typical 3-dot combat sight picture. We'll do a comparison of the two sight pictures. How about that? Doesn't feel like you get your hand quite as high on the P320 as you do in the X5. And of course the X5 has a little bit more beaver tail, which maybe just makes you feel like you're up in there higher. Now this is the 1.5 of the P320. And interestingly enough, and I'll show you this more closely from the workbench, but interestingly enough, the X5, they went to the 1.0. Okay, I promised we'd take a look at these triggers, and take a look at these triggers we shall. Let's do it right now. Okay, let's start with the P320 Classic. This is the 1.5 P320. It has the apex flat trigger, but again, that does not change the mechanics. It only changes the actual trigger pendulum itself. 5 pounds, 10 ounces. And we could do an average, but that is pretty much what I generally observe. That is in the range. Okay, now the X5. £4 pounds, 13 ounces. So it is a little bit lighter. About the same in terms of the brake and the reset. That's that one. That's that one. So, very similar, the triggers. Okay, let me revisit the magazine situation one more time, and I'll try and be brief. But these magazines are not interchangeable. You can see there the main reason why. You got that sort of tombstone shape here on the right side, and that is the P320 magazine. The X5 magazine is a more squared off shape. The boxes themselves are identical. So if you had a 21 round extended magazine for the P320, it's the exact same box magazine. It's just a different base plate. But that shape of the base plate makes a big difference. And the problem is, even if you took these two base plates off and swapped them, which I'm sure you can do, this very tall shoulder that's on here is not going to go up into the P320, nor is this rounded part of the base plate going to go into the X5. So the base plates really are not, even if you swapped them, you just can't do it. What we need is for them to make this squared off base plate with the same height profile as this one. In other words, take away that shoulder. Then you would be able to change base plates, take off the mag well, and have an IDPA legal gun with this type of magazine. But let me show you this little trick. So I've had some questions about, what can you and can't you do in terms of compatibility with these guns, and I promised I would try to answer as much as I could. Well, here's one. Can you swap the slides? Are they compatible back and forth? And the answer is yes. So if we take the slide off of the P320, And then we take the slide, oh, that's stiff, off of the X5. Okay, so got the X5 slide, no mistaking it. This is the P320 frame. Perfect fit, no problem at all. Fits and functions without any issues. So, if it was the heavy barrel I was after, and if it were these really nice Dawson sights I was after, and I've already got my Apex flat trigger, so I'm kind of in the right direction there, and we just saw the trigger pulls are close. Now, I have an IDPA legal gun with the X5 upper. So there's that. Now here's the X5, and the question would be obviously then, well, does it work the other way? Can you put this P320 slide on top of the X5 frame? And the answer is yes, but let's have even more fun than that. Let's take the RX upper and put it on. And now you have an X5 frame with the magwell, with the capacity, and you have your Romeo 1 optic. How sweet is that? So basically, I know what you're saying. You're saying, wow, this whole P320 thing is like the next best thing to Underoos. And you're right. Mix and match all you want with the SIG P320, and that is really the beauty of this platform. So the P320 X5, as I'm sure you've seen by now, is more than just a different slide put on top of the same old frame and maybe a couple bells and whistles added. It truly is a completely redesigned gun all in its own right. The grip is differently shaped and slightly differently textured. Obviously it has the flat trigger. The internal chassis fire control group mechanism is the same. Even with the lightning cuts in the barrel, this gun is still about 5 ounces heavier than the regular full-size P320. You do notice that, but it is not that significant when you're shooting. In fact, as I had mentioned before, this gun, the X5, feels very, very balanced when you're shooting it. Part of that is because of the very extra heavy bull barrel that it has, and also the metal weight that sits right back here inside the grip. So that really balances this gun out nicely. And of course, if you load 21 rounds of ammo in the magazine, you've got a pretty heavy package right there. The big differences, in addition to the ergonomics, are, you know, the sights. With this big bull barrel, you can expect this gun to be able to run faster, harder, longer without getting overheated. So that's something you might want to consider for a competition gun. Everything works exactly the same. The ergonomics from a controls perspective are identical. Magazine drops are easy on both guns. The mag release button is one of my very favorites on any handgun. Obviously reloads are a little easier with this magwell. It's a funnel for you to just shove a new magazine into. Difference in barrel length is not even quite 3/8 of an inch. So it's not super significant, but you know, 4.7 versus 5 even, there is a little bit of difference there. You're not going to see anything really in terms of accuracy or velocity in that small a difference. It really is going to be about balance and feel. Capacity, you can argue 21 rounds, but you can get 21 round magazines for this gun too, so don't let capacity be the thing that makes your decision for you. This gun is limited right now, in my opinion, in that it's not IDPA legal. So, you know, that does definitely detract from its overall usefulness, and I think a large segment of the market that may be interested in it. And yeah, you could say, well, you can do this, 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 and this to make it, you know, to make it IDPA legal. Well, yeah, you could buy a race car and do a lot of work on it to make it, you know, street legal too. But so at the end of the day, which one is more better? Well, that's always hard to say, and it's going to be subjective. So I will give you my subjective opinions. After all, the name of the channel is Just an Opinion. They're both extremely top quality guns. I think there's a little extra care, there's a little extra fit and finish maybe to the X5. Certainly there's some extra bells and whistles to it. But the P320 still feels better in my hand. I still enjoy shooting it slightly more than this gun. I think I shot them both pretty reasonably equal in terms of accuracy, so I can't really say I shoot this one better, I shoot that one better. And again, I've installed the Apex flat trigger on this gun, so they have a very similar feel, even though the Apex is a straighter trigger. But I like the curves of the P320 more than I like the squares and the edges of the X5 overall. So this one feels better in my hand. Now who knows, a week from now, when I wrap a Talon grip on this, it may change the feel enough to where, you know, that becomes a non-issue too. But right now, I like the way the P320 Classic, for lack of a better description, feels in my hand. I like that oval shape more than the squared off shape of the X5. But you can't go wrong either way. They're two awesome pistols.